All right, for more on this U.S. team, we welcome into the show our good friend and colleague, Frank Leboeuf. Obviously going to talk a little bit about Mauricio Pochettino and the impending hire, which is coming, we're told, this week. Frank, I'll give you a minute, though. Herc, I want to start with you because we haven't talked about this game since it occurred. What was your thought on the performance? And then, secondly, the comments there from Mikey Varas.
All right, I'll start on the performance. You and I had a show right before the game, and you asked me what the score would be. I didn't think the U.S. would win.
I think you said tie?
Yeah, tie goals, yes. I didn't think they would win. And part of that was the context of who would be missing here, who was in charge here, what this game would look like, Jesse Marsch and this team really wanting to pound and humiliate the U.S. men's national team. I didn't think a couple years ago when we had Greg Berhalter in studio that this team was particularly tough mentally. I called them soft to Greg Berhalter's face. I certainly don't think they are a team that has grit, fight, spirit, heart today. And this is without a head coach and their starters. But what you saw on the field, was as pitiful a performance. I don't care who was missing. And you could make an argument. There's 6, 7 starters missing on this team. But the players who did get an opportunity, I can understand in your day, your touch is not on. Tactically, technically, it's not going your way. But when you put that jersey on, at the bare minimum, there has to be fight. And there was no fight, there was no heart, and there was no brain. This team continues to try to play out of the back when it's not suited for it. And the players who should be good playing out of the back, because I see Tim Ream do it his whole life, terrible. You should question if he is a player on this team, not a starter, a player on this team.
Based on that performance.
And we could probably go back a few. Johnny Cardoso, how many more opportunities do you need at the senior level? You've had good performances with Real Betis. And every single performance you've had at the senior level, it's been a turnover after turnover. I can go back before Copa America and the performance he had versus Colombia. This was a carbon copy game of what we saw versus Colombia. The way they gave up the ball and the way they reacted to it. And what's worse, it's exactly how Jesse Marsch would have drew it up. Jesse Marsch went on anything he can go on, podcasts, TV, radio shows, and told everybody he's not bitter, but he wants to beat the U.S. men's national team. He wants to pound them. He will beat them 2-1. And guess what happened? He humiliated the U.S. men's national team and beat them 2-1. He said, Mikey Varas, Greg Berhalter disciple. This is how he will play. And guess how Mikey Varas plays? Guess exactly how he set them up to play. Now, on Mikey Varas.
You okay?
You ever had an assistant coach call you out like that? Wash his hands and say, it's not me? He may be right. He may be right. But if I'm a player in that locker room, and maybe that's, if you're a player in that locker room, it doesn't stir you up because it didn't stir you up when Jesse Marsch was talking like that. It didn't give you bulletin board material. But if you're Christian Pulisic, who's had some of the best coaches in the world, and you have this assistant coach wash his hands and say, I can't run for the players. These guys have no start. I'm not a psychologist. I couldn't tell you. You know how pissed off I would be? Throws him under the bus. And he may be right. But that's not how you do it.
How worried should U.S. fans be, Ale? Just this mentality thing, it keeps coming up, no matter who the coach is now.
Yeah, and it's the one thing that if you go back 20, 30 years about the United States, the one thing that you knew you were going to have from teams representing the United States was fight, was mentality. The question was whether the talent was there, whether the actual playing of the game was there, whether they had enough experience, whether they could compete at the highest level. But there was never a question in terms of the mentality, the grit, the fight. What I would tell you about Mikey Varas is that he's a substitute teacher. Now, you asked me a question I didn't even get to answer. So I'll ask you, and I'll put the question out there. Have you ever cared about a substitute teacher? When the real teacher is not there and is absent, and they bring the substitute teacher, you know what has happened in every class that I've ever participated? They just put on a movie, right? Because the substitute teacher knows that nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying attention, and this is the equivalent here. This is a substitute teacher. These players know that this guy making the decisions is not the guy, won't be the guy. They don't care. And that's the way they play. They play as students behave when there is a substitute teacher. They couldn't care less. They're not fully invested. They're not running. They're not completing passes. They're just going through the motions. Let's just get through this game and let's get out of here. It's too hot. Fans didn't even bother to show up to the game in Fan Appreciation Day. So if they don't care, we don't care, nobody cares. And that's the way they perform. The problem is that there were guys here that, to Hercules' point, had a chance to make a case for themselves, and they did not. And what's even more troubling is that the guys that came off the bench, because they were actually running, and this is a point that we made over the weekend, they were actually running. I'm not even talking about playing well, just running from point A to point B, full sprint. They actually look like players. They look like much better options than the guys that started the match because at the very least, you saw some fight, you saw some grit, you saw a reaction, you saw running, you saw effort. The very basic things that you have to show when you play for your national team. But as long as there's a substitute teacher, you'll be getting a whole lot of this.
If I may just briefly, I 100% agree with the substitute teacher feeling of this, but I can't believe these players would be so foolish as to think that if Mauricio Pochettino really is coming to your team, really will be your coach, he won't see this performance and think, okay, that's you? And now you're behind the eight ball. How foolish can you be?
Well, behind the eight ball in terms of what? You're not behind many other players. The pool is the pool. And so who are you going to turn to? You got the guys that are injured, and those guys will come back into a position in which they're going to play. But beyond that, the fight between Johnny Cardoso and Luca de la Torre is a meaningless fight. Let's not kid ourselves. If that's what you're depending on here is whether it's Luca de la Torre or Johnny Cardoso that plays in the middle of midfield for the United States, then we're having a different conversation.
Let me give you an example. A Fuller and Balogun, who's been given opportunity after opportunity, and now his place at Monaco is in jeopardy. He's no longer a starter. And he's got guys like Haji Wright nipping at his heels, scoring goals, being forced to play out wide. You've got a Josh Sargent who's healthy, scoring goals. You've got a Ricardo Pepi that when he does play, provides dangerous opportunities, has scored goals. If you're a Fuller and Balogun, and this is the performance you give, and you know Mauricio Pochettino is watching, I would be worried.
I love the substitute teacher reference because I'm often called the substitute teacher on this show, and maybe that'll explain some of the behavior that I get from some of the cast.
You're kind of bitter hanging on to that for a while.
From time to time.
Definitely.
Frank, let's bring you in here. What did you see from this U.S. team in the game against Canada? A Canadian team, by the way, I should note that Frank picked to go to the semifinals
he believes.
At the last World Cup. He might have been wrong there, but he saw the future coming, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's say that I was very optimistic for Canada, but I'm definitely not for United States, and worried about what Pochettino would think about what he saw, and maybe capable of changing his mind, because really we saw nothing. Yeah, you can be bad, you can be with no ideas, but the only thing you can do, especially when you play for your country, let's be repeated, playing for your country, you have to show your pride. Therefore, you have to have a fighting mentality, because that's what it is. It's your country. I played for France. I've been banned with France, but I've gave more than 100% every time. Fighting because that was my country. And what I saw, even if it's a friendly game, I don't care. Even if you have a substitute coach, you play for your country. And what I saw Saturday was awful, horrendous, turgid, someone would say. That was something so pompous, something that we don't see, that I never expected United States main national team being at that level, so poor. I saw nothing. Yeah, you want to play from the back, you're not capable of doing it. Play higher on the field, but you don't run for when you have to defend. You don't run to offer a solution to the guy who has the ball. You don't play to each other with each other. You don't talk to each other. There was an emptiness in that stadium for the U.S. men's national team. That was really worrying for Pochettino.
Frank, take me back to fall of 1996, because you will have been obviously totally different expectations, but in a somewhat similar position to these American players playing in a home World Cup. Where was the French national team in the fall of 96? And did you have to make a lot of progress to eventually get to where you were in the summer of '98 to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I want to remind to everybody that we didn't qualify for '94, so the coach was sacked, Gérard Rouillet. Aimé Jacquet was the substitute coach at first and stepped up and decided to go the other way, trying to create a club inside the national team. So we started straight after '94 and 93, because it was like kind of a year before the World Cup. And he started to build some team and got rid of the Cantona, the Papin, the Dimecos, Sauzet, some others, very talented players, but to create something else. And it's when I showed up that Thuram showed up as well, Lizarazu, Karambeu, and Zidane as well just before. So it was something special. We weren't good, I have to tell you. We had a hard time, but one thing we had, and it's what I explained before, we were fighting for our colors and our country. And we were very good defensively. We were working defensively all together, not trying to be exceptional, but to be effective. And we grew up like that. We've been so much criticized by the medias, so there is some hope for the US men's national team. And we clicked for the first game against South Africa in Marseille for the World Cup. I tell you, 3 days before, or 5 days before we played against, I think it was Finland, we drew in Finland. That was awful. But we drew. We didn't lose. It was a 0-0. We were strong. We were there. We had the basics. And then came the magic with Zidane and some others. And we finished ending up being the top team who scored the most goals and the best defense, winning the World Cup. So there are ups, but they have to work together. They have to be willing to work together. And it's up to Pochettino to create that as well.
Well, with all due respect,
Zidane's not walking through that door.
I'm just saying. Frank and that French national team had potential for magic.
Sure, I said different expectations.
Yes.
I gave myself the out there.
I saw the look you gave him.
That's a different type of magic.
I'm just wondering about the time frame, like if it's reasonable to expect this team to get out of the gutter before the World Cup.
Well, it's reasonable to expect this team to get out of their group in the World Cup, and then it's reasonable to maybe potentially win a round of 16 games, and then that's it. That's it, people. That's it. Calm down. Relax. That's it. That's the ceiling.
It's 2 years. You ought to be able to fix a team in 2 years.
I don't disagree with you about being able to fix it. And listen, it's way too early because we have no idea about what the groups would look like, the cross would look like. A lot of times that's what it will take in a World Cup. But certainly, it's enough time for Mauricio Pochettino to come in and mold them in a way he thinks that they can make something happen. If they did it with Greg Berhalter in a somewhat very respectable way in international terms, they can do it with Mauricio Pochettino.
My concern about that, I'm sorry, Ali. My concern about that is Mauricio Pochettino knows almost no players from the US men's national team and from the MLS. And he will have to use some of them. Yes, most of them play abroad, but some of them play there. And if you want to create something else, you also want to create a competition between the players. You have to know every players. And he's not a domestic. He doesn't know anything about the culture, the American culture, the way to transform maybe the player, the way to talk to the players, because we have a different culture. Aimé Jacquet knew exactly what to do. He knew all the players. I was in the League 2 a year before he contacted me to play in the B team. And we played against Venezuela, by the way. I think, and we won.
How'd that go?
And we won against Venezuela, just to say.
You wouldn't have brought it up if they
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
But
Thank
whatever.
You. Let's see.
It was June 7, 1993. I remember exactly. Whatever. But he knew the culture of the player. He knew how to talk to them. So the psychological aspect of the substitute coach that he talked before, after this, on the press conference, is crucial. You have to know the player. You have to know how to talk to them, the way to talk to them. Therefore, you have to know the culture of the players. And Pochettino doesn't. He's a great coach. He has the talent. It worked on a daily time with some clubs. It's a different story with a national team.
I actually think, and I understand what Frank is saying and where he's coming from with this, I actually think it may be a good thing because he doesn't owe anything to any of these guys. And all these guys have to prove themselves to him. All these guys have to make a case for him and say, I belong in the national team because I can do this, this, and this for you. It's like now they're auditioning. Everybody's auditioning again. It's not that you have a position that is just safe and reserved for you because you're this guy or that guy. No. No. Everybody's starting from zero, and now you're auditioning. Now, when we say everybody's starting from zero, Christian Pulisic is not starting from zero, but a bunch of these guys are. A bunch of these guys are not in the comfort zone in which the coach is my buddy, the coach loves me, the coach owes me something. No. Mauricio Pochettino doesn't owe any of these guys anything.
He doesn't really know you.
No, absolutely
not.
not.
Doesn't even know who you are.
Absolutely not. And it gets to the point to where he's just evaluating what he sees. And I think this team needs a little bit of that. Just evaluation, objective evaluation. Not what you might have been, what you could have been, what you should be, the golden generation. No. None of that nonsense. Let me see what you can do today.
No ELO ratings. No ELO ratings.
I have no idea what that is.
The ELO ratings. That's why they brought Greg Berhalter
no
back.
idea what you're talking
Just to get the latest reporting on this in, Jeff Carlisle reporting that the board of directors for U.S. Soccer met yesterday to approve the contract for Pochettino. We should have an announcement in the next 24 to 48 hours. I'm almost sure we'll have it before our next show on Thursday. Let's move on to a manager who could have been the coach for the U.S. men's national team and is definitely not bitter about the fact that he is not the coach, and he's very happy to be coaching Canada. He wants you to know that through gritted teeth. Here's the post-game comments from Jesse Marsch. Quote, "I'm not bitter. I'd much rather coach Canada than the U.S. right now. You can see the mentality that's been developed. You can see the way this team plays. You can see how much they love playing for the national team, and they're willing to put their careers and lives in the way they play on the line to be the best they can be for each other and for the team. I wouldn't change coaching this team right now for anything in the world." Ale, we've actually had Jesse Marsch on Football Americas before, and he told us coaching the U.S. men's national team was his dream job.
Apparently not.
Do you think he could still walk back into that dream after all this?
No, I don't think so. I think he continues to burn bridges, and we had this conversation off camera the other day. It's like he's not only burning the bridges, it's like he's sitting there with a flamethrower at the bridges and just going openly, just blowing fire everywhere. And he's blowing fire at U.S. Soccer Federation, he's blowing fire at the players, he is burning bridges everywhere he goes. And what I said a couple of days ago, I'll say it again, is this game has a way of what goes around comes around. It's a very small world, and you don't need to be doing this and be burning these bridges. When somebody tells you that they're not bitter, they are bitter. If they have to tell you, I'm not bitter, yes, you are. You're bitter, right? And how it was handled and how it was managed, obviously for him, he felt it was a personal shot, and he hasn't been able to let go. Just go and coach Canada. You just said, right, that you wouldn't want anything else in the world than coach this team. Then coach Canada. Why are you concerned about what the United States does or doesn't do? Why are you concerned about what the United States players do or don't do? I don't understand. If you're telling me on one quote, you're telling me I would not change anything. I wouldn't do anything else in the world but coach Canada. Then coach Canada. Coach Canada. Don't concern yourself about what you didn't get or what didn't happen for you. As to the fact of him saying that he wouldn't coach or he wouldn't take any coaching position right now in the world, it's a bald-faced lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a good line that you can sell to the Canadian fans and the Canadian players, but even the players know that that's a lie.